Hey, this is Matt Urtz, the Madison County historian. We are still working to document how the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has impacted different businesses, people, places, and things. Today, we are very lucky to have with us Jennifer Wong, the executive director of the Cazenovia Preservation Foundation. Jennifer, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So for those that aren't familiar, can you kind of explain what Cazenovia Preservation Foundation is and what it does?
Sure. The Cazenovia Preservation Foundation was incorporated in 1967, so it's been around for a little while. It's an organization that protects the historic, agricultural, and natural resources in and around Cazenovia for the benefit of the community. So we hold approximately 2,700 acres under conservation easements. So those are private lands with conservation easements placed on them for a variety of purposes, whether that's open space and habitat preservation, farmland preservation. We also own approximately 415 acres of property. Some of that is traversed by about 13 miles of public access trails. The third piece of our mission is the historic preservation component. We hold facade easements on a number of important buildings in the village of Cazenovia to protect the historic downtown architecture. We also have an outreach and education piece to our mission. We host a series of educational walk and talk events each year. We work with the local school district on some history education pieces, and we host a variety of winter lecture series as well over the years.
And you guys host one of my favorite events every year, the haunted Halloween in the cemetery, the little bit of history, a little bit of fun.
That is right. That is correct. Typically this time of year, we would be very, very deep in the planning and preparation for what has come to be a very popular event, our annual Walk Among the Spirits, which we have held for the last 7 years in the Evergreen Cemetery. And we have appreciated your help with some of that research and your presentations in the past, Matt.
Well,
we are not hosting that event. We are not hosting that event this year, but we do hope to get back to it in future.
So, and that leads into the next part of this. Talk about when COVID kind of popped up on the foundation's radar and what your response has been.
Well, I think personally it popped up on my radar pretty early in the game, and that's partly due to my husband's position, working with Colgate and many of their study abroad programs. So I think we had an awareness of what was coming, maybe before the general community had a sense for what that might look like for us locally. As an organization, where we really saw it starting to affect our operations was probably in early to mid-March, as things did start kind of closing down around here, and we saw trail use just skyrocket. Trails that typically might have 1 or 2 cars, on a weekday would have 5 or 6 cars. People out there trying to get their daily exercise and time spent in nature. So that's where we really saw the timing, probably mid-March. We started posting signs about how to use trails safely in COVID times and that sort of thing.
And when you say use trail safety, you were using the guidelines put out by the state, by the federal government, by?
Correct. Okay. Yep. Now making sure that people were aware of the appropriate protocol to follow and places where people could get that up to the minute information for what was being recommended for us in central New York.
So you guys start working on the trails. You also have events. Talk about the process of deciding whether or not you're going to have events, because I think you have had a couple still, but not as many as you traditionally would.
Correct. We really, we had a nice lineup of walk and talk scheduled for the spring and the summer for this year, which we began canceling on a rolling basis the first ones were originally scheduled for early May. And, about once a month, we would kind of look at, what is the status, and looking ahead a month. We just didn't feel that it was appropriate and safe at that time to be gathering even small groups of people for those events. We have, as the numbers have gone down in Madison County and the schools have opened back up, we did just recently host a fall trail appreciation day in lieu of the larger fundraiser dinner that we had originally begun planning for this fall. Originally, we thought we would be able to host our big fundraiser dinner, 200 people evening event, which is a significant source of revenue for a small organization like ours. But what we did instead was we focused on our trails, because we feel that that's been such an important resource for the community this year, and really was resonating with people. And we were able to do a dispersed event where we had just small groups, family groups coming to meet with board members at our 5 major trailheads, and be able to talk, learn a little bit more about the organization, a little bit more about CPF trails, maybe trails that they're not familiar with, and then do a little self-guided walk on our trail. So it felt like an appropriate event for COVID times.
You referenced the dinner. Have you guys lost any other forms of revenue from the year?
We do rely on grant funding for some of our work, and we do want, we anticipate that that will be a little bit more difficult to secure this year and next. And we will see, we'll be putting our annual appeal out in late November, early December, and we're anticipating, we're not sure what the returns on that will be this year. I think it depends very much on where we are at that point.
What about, you guys have another relatively big event. You have an event in November, the Thanksgiving Turkey Trot. Is that something that can be had, or is that because you have people that might be too close, not going to be able to do it?
I don't think we would do it in the traditional way, and that's something we had held off on the discussions on that until after our Trail Appreciation Day. So the Development and Outreach Committee will be meeting again shortly, and we'll entertain that question.
As you move forward and look to the future, do you feel like this is going to impact how your organization does business moving forward, or do you feel like when things get back to normal, you can move back to normal?
Well, I think it depends on the time horizon that we're looking at here. I think certainly for the next couple of years, we will probably be planning with a lot of contingencies in place. I think the hope is that at some point down the road, we would be able to do those bigger events, bus tour, barn tours, and things like that that we've done in the past that have been so popular. But certainly we adopted a budget for the organization this year, and then we adopted a contingency budget. And that might just be how we do our planning going forward for the foreseeable future.
Have you had to delay any projects or work because of this?
We have. We have a couple of things that we have had to wait until more information about the security of funding is available.
So a few years ago, you guys had, I shouldn't say your organization, one of the trails had a pretty significant washout that required a lot of heavy equipment to come in and do repairs. Mm-hmm. Have you had anything like that happen this year? And if so, have you been able to do the repairs, or how's that work right now?
Thankfully, no. Thankfully, those kinds of major trail projects are not an every year event. So we haven't had anything on that scale. We have been able to do the upkeep and maintenance on our trails. And we have seen kind of a, I won't say renewed, but more broader support for the trails from the community, more interest in people becoming a part of our stewardship committee or being a stewardship volunteer and getting out there to help with trails. One of the things, often in the summer, spring and summer, we'll host a series of trail work days where we try to get a big group of people together to go out and, do a big trail project. And obviously that was not appropriate this year. But one thing we were able to do is we put together a series of family trail work project days to help make sure that we could meet some of those trail maintenance needs, but also meet the community's needs in terms of students wanting to get volunteer hours over the summer. So we put together these series of projects that families could go and do on their own, in their own individual group. So provided information on, what the project was, what tools they would need, and any materials that they needed to understand the work to be done. And families could go and do that themselves. So again, it's just, there are ways to get these things done, but it required some creativity this year.
I guess this would be my last question then. What would you like to say to the folks of Cazenovia and all the areas that you serve? Because you also, I think, serve Nelson and Fenner a little, or am I wrong in that?
We, our service area is the Cazenovia Central School District boundaries.
Okay.
So we do have properties, up on near Chittenango, and we do recruit members from that whole area. I guess I would say thank you to members of the community. People have been very courteous on trails, and I really had this sense that people were more thoughtful, more patient, especially in the early days of COVID, and just willing to kind of take that extra moment to step off the trail and let another group pass, and you just see it coming out in those little ways. So thank you for your patience, thank you for your respect for others on the trail and for the trails themselves, and we hope that people will continue to use that resource for some respite and exercise.
And if folks wanted to learn more about your trails or the Cazenovia Preservation Foundation, how could they do that?
Probably the best way to do that is to visit us on our website at www.cazpreservation.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
Thank you for taking the time to do this with us, Jennifer. I really do appreciate it. I hope to down the road be part of the next Haunted Spirits event. And maybe it seems like every 3 or 4 years, Judy used to rope me into a very fun hiking tour somewheres along the old creek, the Chittenango Creek. So
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll do that when things are better again as well. I appreciate it.
We're looking forward to it.
Have a good day now.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Bye.
Bye now.